In the 41st millennium, there are no heroes. There are only survivors, fanatics, and the damned. The Imperium has endured 10,000 years, not through justice or mercy, but through faith, fear, and the absolute willingness to sacrifice anything for humanity's continuation. Into this nightmare fell a man who had spent his life believing that justice could exist without compromise, that one person could make a difference through will alone. He was about to learn that some universes were never designed for hope. The rift opened above Hive Volantis like a wound in reality itself. For 3 seconds, the auger arrays of the planetary defense grid screamed warnings that made no sense. Impossible energy signatures, dimensional breaches that defied every known law of warp travel. Then something fell from the black, tear in space. Batman had been pursuing the Riddler through Gotham's East End when reality simply shattered. One moment, his grappling line was pulling him between skyscrapers. The next, he was tumbling through a kaleidoscope of impossible colors and geometries that made his eyes bleed. His cape whipped around him as he plummeted through what his mind insisted couldn't exist. A tunnel of broken physics where time moved in multiple directions and space folded like origami. He hit the rooftop hard. Training took over. Roll, disperse impact, come up in defensive crouch. His gauntlets scraped against corroded metal. The air tasted wrong, sulfurous, chemical, organic decay mixed with promethium fumes and something else. Incense? Burning bodies? Batman's cowl HUD flickered, useless. GPS. No signal. Communications array. Empty static. Date, time, corrupted data stream. He was alone in a way he'd never experienced, cut off from Oracle, from Alfred, from every system he'd spent years building. The city sprawling below him was wrong. Gotham's Gothic architecture was a whisper compared to this. Towering spires of blackened iron and ferrocrete stretched kilometers into a perpetually smog-choked sky. Hab blocks the size of Wayne Tower were stacked atop each other like a child's blocks, connected by suspension bridges where rivers of humanity flowed like ants. Neon signs flickered in what might have been low Gothic, advertising things he couldn't comprehend. The scale was incomprehensible. This single district dwarfed all of Gotham. A factory cathedral dominated the horizon, its smokestacks crowned with what appeared to be massive Aquila emblems, 2-headed eagles wreathed in flames. The symbolism was clear, even without context. Authority, power, religious iconography merged with industrial might. Not Kansas anymore, Batman muttered, his voice activator working despite everything else failing. At least some systems remained operational. Movement. 3 blocks down, figures in carapace armor, military or police, were cordoning off the impact zone. Their weapons looked crude but effective, las rifles, judging by the power packs. Body language suggested training and discipline, not random thugs. Organized authority responding to his arrival. He needed information, needed to understand where and potentially when he was. The technology suggested either far future or alternate Earth. The architecture and obvious religious imagery pointed to some form of theocratic government. The scale suggested either massive population density or post-scarcity resource allocation. Neither boded well for civil liberties. Batman activated his cowl's passive sensors. Atmospheric analysis, toxic by Earth standards, breathable with adaptation. Radiation, elevated but manageable. Electromagnetic spectrum, saturated with vox chatter on frequencies his equipment couldn't decrypt. Gravitational constant, standard. At least physics still worked the same way. A piercing alarm shrieked across the district, different from the factory sirens. This was specific, targeted. Search pattern. They were hunting him. Batman moved. Stealth was his element, and these industrial canyons provided endless shadows. He traversed the roofline, cataloging everything. The people below wore grimy work clothes, moving with the defeated shuffle of the perpetually exhausted. Children, far too many children, worked alongside adults in exposed manufactorum yards. No safety equipment, no regulations. The stench of human suffering rose like fog. This wasn't just authoritarian. This was dystopian on a scale that made Gotham's worst neighborhoods look like paradise. He dropped into an alley where rusted pipes leaked something viscous and brown. A hunched figure, vagrant or worker, impossible to tell, looked up with augmented eyes, mechanical implants replacing organic tissue. The man's jaw was half metal. He screamed, a warbling electronic sound, and fled. Batman's fist clenched. Whatever world this was, cybernetic augmentation was common enough that his appearance, costumed vigilante from another dimension, somehow registered as more frightening than casual body modification. The search patterns were tightening, disciplined, professional. These weren't beat cops. This was military precision. 3 squads converging, cutting off exit vectors. They knew basic urban pursuit tactics. A spotlight stabbed down from above. Batman looked up to see a bulky aircraft, too blocky to be aerodynamic, compensating with brute thrust, hovering on screaming engines. A voice boomed from external speakers, words in a language that was almost English but archaic, formal. Unidentified entity, by the authority of the God Emperor's Holy Inquisition, you are commanded to cease movement and submit to immediate detention. Resistance will be met with terminal force. Inquisition, religious police. Batman's mind raced through implications. God Emperor suggested personality cult, deification of authority. Holy suggested theocratic government. Terminal force was refreshingly honest, at least. He had perhaps 30 seconds before they had visual confirmation. The aircraft's searchlight swept methodically, and ground forces were entering the alley from both ends. Batman pulled a smoke pellet from his utility belt. Finite resources now, each one precious. And threw it. Grey smoke billowed, and he was already moving, grappling line firing toward a drainage pipe 20 meters up. The line caught, pneumatics pulled, and he swung into darkness just as lasfire scorched the wall where he'd been standing. Lasfire, energy weapons. The bolts left glowing scars in ferrocrete. This wasn't just another Earth. This was something far more dangerous. He found refuge in the shadows of a massive ventilation shaft, heart rate controlled, breathing steady despite the exertion. Below, soldiers in carapace armor methodically searched the alley. Their movements were practiced, efficient. One held a device that swept back and forth, some kind of scanner. Auger readings lost in the smoke, sir. Target possesses stealth capabilities. Vox the Inquisitor. Tell him the Xenos, or whatever it is, evaded initial contact. Expand search grid. Authorization vermilion. If it bleeds, we can track it. Xenos. Alien. They thought he was extraterrestrial. Given the circumstances, not an unfair assumption. Batman watched them spread out, noting tactics, weapon positions, communication protocols. He was gathering intelligence the only way he knew how: observation, deduction, patience. But one thought dominated his analytical mind. If this was their response to a single unknown contact, what kind of threats did this world face that justified such overwhelming force? And more importantly, if he'd arrived here through some kind of dimensional breach, could there be a way back? The night was young, and the 41st Millennium had no idea what had just fallen into its grasp. Neither did Batman. But he would learn. He always did. Somewhere in the hive, an Inquisitor received the report of an impossible anomaly and smiled. The God Emperor provided challenges to test the faithful. This one would be particularly interesting. If you crave stories where the world's greatest detective faces his ultimate challenge in the grimdark future, smash that subscribe button. The Emperor protects those who bear witness to impossible encounters in the Dark Millennium. Batman had evaded capture for 6 hours. In Gotham, that would have been routine. Here, it was becoming clear that 6 hours was a minor miracle. The Inquisition didn't hunt like Gotham PD or even the FBI. They hunted like an immune system attacking a foreign pathogen, systematic, relentless, and willing to destroy healthy tissue to eliminate the infection. Entire hab blocks had been sealed. Thousands of civilians were detained for questioning. Batman watched from a ventilation shaft as Arbites, local enforcers in massive carapace armor, executed 3 people whose only crime was being in the wrong place when the search began. No trial, no appeals. Just a judge's gavel, 3 lace bolts to the skull, and bodies dumped in a refuse chute. Bruce Wayne had seen evil. Ra's al Ghul's genocidal environmentalism. Joker's nihilistic chaos. Darkseid's tyrannical absolutism. But this wasn't evil. This was procedure. Sanctioned, systematic, casual brutality as standard operating method. The executioner hadn't even paused to reload before moving to the next checkpoint. This world didn't just tolerate authoritarianism. It weaponized it as survival strategy. Batman's utility belt was already depleted. 3 smoke pellets gone, 2 batarangs expended as distractions, 1 explosive gel charge used to collapse a tunnel and buy time. Finite resources in an infinite nightmare. He'd broken into what appeared to be a local enforcer station, accessing their data terminals through sheer cryptographic skill. The language was slowly resolving in his mind. Low Gothic, apparently, a bastardized descendant of ancient Terra's tongues. What he'd learned in those stolen minutes had recontextualized everything. The Imperium of man, 1,000,000 worlds. 10,000 years of warfare, humanity besieged on all sides by literal demons, alien empires, and existential horrors. The god Emperor, a corpse deity sustained by sacrificing 1,000 Psykers, psychics, daily. The Inquisition, authorized to destroy entire planets to prevent corruption. And the Warp, a parallel dimension where human emotion and belief literally shaped reality, where demons were real, where faith was both shield and weapon. Batman's rational mind rebelled against the data, but the evidence was overwhelming. This wasn't metaphor. This wasn't superstition. In this universe, belief had tangible power, and the laws of physics were negotiable. His cowl's damage assessment blinked red. Psychic phenomena detected. Except his cowl had no sensors for psychic phenomena because psychic phenomena didn't exist in his universe. The alert had triggered 3 minutes ago, correlating with a sudden cold spike and the taste of copper. Now standing in the abandoned factorum where he'd taken shelter, Batman understood why. He wasn't alone. Fascinating, a voice said from everywhere and nowhere. A human, clearly. Yet the warp doesn't recognize you. No soul signature, no psychic resonance. You are, for all metaphysical purposes, invisible to the Imperium. Batman's hand moved to his utility belt. Show yourself. How delightfully direct. The shadows coalesced, and a figure stepped into the dim lumens. A man in power armor, crimson and black, adorned with purity seals and an inquisitorial rosette displaying a stylized eye crowned with a skull. His face was aristocratic, scarred, with augmented eyes that glowed faint amber. A power sword hung at his hip, and a bolt pistol rested in a holster. I am Inquisitor Valerius Cade, Ordo Xenos, and you are the most intriguing anomaly I've encountered in 40 years of service. Ordo Xenos, alien hunters. Batman's voice was level, betraying nothing. You think I'm extraterrestrial? You arrived via dimensional breach. You possess technology that doesn't match any known STC pattern. Your body chemistry is human, but your equipment suggests a civilization that invested in individual enhancement rather than mass armament. Cade circled slowly, analyzing. Yet you hide in shadows rather than announce yourself. Curious. Most Xenos either attack immediately or attempt negotiation. You observe. I'm human. From Earth. Batman kept his body language neutral, combat-ready but non-threatening. I don't know how I got here. Earth. Terra. In low Gothic. And I'm the God Emperor incarnate. Cade's smile didn't reach his augmented eyes. Do you think me a fool? Terra is the throne world, heart of the Imperium, most fortified planet in existence. If you came from Terra, you'd recognize Imperial iconography. Batman filed that away. Earth, Terra, was apparently the capital of this empire. Thousands of years of divergent history. Then test me. Blood sample. DNA. Prove I'm human. Cade's expression shifted, genuine interest flickering across calculated suspicion. You offer biological evidence freely, also curious. He pulled a small device from his belt, a needle extending. This will extract genetic material and cellular structure. If you're some Genestealer hybrid or polymorphine shapeshifter, it will reveal such. If I were trying to infiltrate, I wouldn't have fallen from the sky, triggering every sensor in the district. Valid point. Cade stepped closer, the needle device poised. Remove the gauntlet. Batman complied, exposing his wrist. The needle jabbed in, drawing blood. The device hummed, processing. Cade's eyes narrowed as he read the results. Emperor's Mercy. You're actually baseline human. No genetic deviation. No Xenos contamination. Impossible cellular cohesion for someone from a hive environment. You're healthier than most Space Marine aspirants. Cade looked up, re-evaluating. What are you? Someone who's very far from home. 3 armored figures materialized from concealment. Cade's retinue, Batman realized, watching him the entire time. 2 held bolters trained on his center mass. The third carried a force staff crackling with psychic energy. A Psyker. Throne, the Psyker breathed, feminine voice distorted through a rebreather. Inquisitor. His soul is muted. Like looking through frosted glass, I can barely perceive him in the warp. An untouchable, Cade mused. No, my lord. Untouchables create a void, a null zone. This is different. He exists, but quietly, as if his soul speaks a different language than our reality. Batman processed this. In a universe where psychic power was real, he apparently didn't register properly. Dimensional incompatibility. His soul, if such a thing existed, was formatted for a different metaphysical operating system. Tactical advantage. They couldn't easily read his mind or predict him through psychic means. I'm going to ask you questions, Cade said, voice hardening into command authority. You will answer truthfully. Resistance is futile. I have an entire Inquisitorial fortress at my disposal. Sanctioned torture devices blessed by the ecclesiarchy, and cherubim servitors who can keep you conscious for weeks while we extract information. Or you cooperate, and we explore the possibility that you're an unprecedented anomaly rather than a threat. Choose wisely. Batman met his gaze. I'll answer questions, but I want information in return. Where I am, when I am. What this Imperium is. You negotiate from a position of zero leverage. I evaded your forces for 6 hours with no knowledge of the terrain, no support, and technology you admit doesn't match your databases. I've already studied your tactics, your language, your social structure. I disabled 3 of your surveillance checkpoints without lethal force. Batman's voice was ice. I'm valuable, alive, and cooperative. Dead. I'm just another corpse in your mass graves. Silence stretched. Then Cade laughed, genuine, surprised. You have spine. Anomaly. Very well. A trade. Information for compliance. He gestured, and the retinue lowered their weapons fractionally. But the interrogation happens in controlled conditions. My facility. My rules. No torture. That depends entirely on whether you're truthful. Fair enough. Batman allowed them to place manacles on his wrists. Archaic, but effective. Bonded ceramite reinforced with what appeared to be trace adamantium. They didn't confiscate his utility belt, interestingly. Overconfidence? Or Cade wanted to study it intact? The transport to Cade's facility was a Valkyrie gunship. Brutal, functional, no wasted design aesthetics. Through the viewport, Batman watched Hive Volantis sprawl below, a cancer of metal and flesh consuming the landscape. Billions lived in those stacks, billions suffering under the boot of necessity. The facility was built into the Hive Spire's upper levels. Relatively clean air, reinforced walls inscribed with wards and prayers. The Inquisition took their security seriously. Psychic dampeners hummed at intersections, and servo skulls, actual human skulls with mechanical implants, floated through corridors on anti-grav units, sensor equipment replacing eyes. The interrogation chamber was surprisingly civilized. 2 chairs, a table, lumen strips providing steady light, no obvious torture implements. Cade sat across from him. The Psyker stood in the corner, silent. The retinue waited outside. "Let's begin simply," Cade said, producing a data slate. "Name." Batman calculated. Aliases were useless here. They had his blood. "Bruce Wayne." "Planet of origin?" "Earth. But not your terror. A different Earth." Cade's expression remained neutral, but Batman caught the micro-expression of interest. "Explain." So Batman did. Carefully, selectively. He described Gotham, his world's technology level, the absence of psychic powers or alien species. He omitted his vigilante activities, framing himself as an investigator pursuing a criminal when the dimensional breach occurred. He described the Riddler as a terrorist rather than a costumed villain. Throughout, the Psyker monitored him. "Truth, my lord," or he believes it to be truth. "Dimensional travel," Cade murmured. "Not unprecedented. The warp can create such breaches. Usually they deposit demons or worse. You're claiming to be an accidental refugee from a parallel reality." "Yes." "And your equipment? This armor, these devices?" "Personal resources. I'm wealthy in my world. I invested in protection." "Against what? You claim no Xenos, no demons." "Crime? Human evil? We have plenty of that." Cade studied him for a long moment. "You're a warrior. Your physiology shows extensive training. Your psychology, what little we can read, suggests trauma, discipline, purpose. You're no mere investigator." Batman said nothing. "Very well. Keep your secrets for now. Here's what you need to understand, Bruce Wayne." Cade leaned forward. "This is the 41st millennium. Humanity teeters on the brink of extinction. We are besieged by forces that would destroy, consume, or corrupt us. The Imperium is brutal because mercy is a luxury that births catastrophe. Every world we fail to defend becomes a demon world. Every heretic we fail to execute births a cult. Every alien we spare grows strong enough to devour us." Sounds like a justification for atrocity. "It's reality. You want proof?" Cade activated the data slate, and hololithic images appeared. Worlds burning. Humans transformed into writhing mutants, demons tearing through reality. "This is what we fight. This is why I will do whatever necessary to protect humanity, even if it damns my soul." Batman absorbed the images. If this was propaganda, it was extraordinarily detailed, and his instincts, honed through years of reading people, suggested Cade believed every word. "I'm not your enemy," Batman said. "Perhaps, perhaps not. But you're here, and I need to determine what that means." Cade stood. "You'll remain as my guest. Restricted movement, supervised activities. Prove your utility, and we'll discuss what happens next. Betray this clemency, and I'll have you executed as a potential warp spawn regardless of your genetic purity." "What do you want from me?" Cade's smile was predatory. "High Volantis has a problem. A Genestealer cult. To be precise, Xenos infiltrators who corrupt human genetics, turning the faithful into alien hybrids. I've been hunting them for 2 months with no success. They're hidden in the populace, indistinguishable until they reveal themselves." He paused. "You claim to be an investigator. Prove it. Help me find them, and you'll have earned my trust." Batman recognized the trap. Forced cooperation. Prove his value or face execution. Classic coercion. But it was also an opportunity. Access to information. Time to formulate a plan. A chance to understand this nightmare universe. "I'll need access to your case files, crime scene data, witness testimonies." "Granted. Sister Carmilla will escort you to the archives." Cade gestured to the Psyker. "Attempt to escape, and she'll alert me instantly. Attempt to harm any of my staff, and you'll learn why the Inquisition is feared across the galaxy." Batman stood, manacles removed. "Understood." As he followed Sister Carmilla from the Interrogation Chamber, one thought dominated his mind. He'd bought himself time, access, and leverage. Now came the hard part. Figuring out how to survive in a universe where faith shaped reality, where morality was a calculated sacrifice, and where the detective who never killed would have to decide if his code could exist in the grimdark future. The archives awaited, and with them, secrets the Inquisition had been unable to unravel. Batman intended to change that. The archives were a cathedral to paranoia. Vaulted ceilings inscribed with prayers to the God Emperor. Rows of data stacks containing 10,000 years of recorded heresy, Xenos encounters, and demonic incursions. Servo skulls drifted between shelves, their optical sensors tracking every movement. Sister Carmilla stood by the entrance, her force staff humming with latent psychic energy, watching Batman with the intensity of someone expecting betrayal. Batman ignored her, focusing on the case files Cade had provided, parchment and data slates. This Imperium used both low and high technology seemingly at random, superstition blending with science in ways that defied logic. The Genestealer cult investigation spanned 63 documented incidents over 4 months, 47 missing persons, 16 recovered corpses showing biological alterations, extra arms, chitinous growths, cranial deformities, 3 ambushed Arbites patrols, 2 destroyed surveillance stations, 0 suspects in custody who survived interrogation long enough to provide intelligence. Cade's methods were thorough but blunt. Mass arrests in suspected districts, enhanced interrogation. Batman recognized torture when it was euphemistically labeled. Psychic probing that left subjects catatonic. Execution of anyone who failed purity screenings. The Inquisitor had probably killed more innocent people than actual cultists, and he'd still failed to locate the cult's leadership or primary nest. Batman spread the crime scene picts across the table, arranging them chronologically. His detective's mind, trained by years of analyzing Gotham's criminal patterns, began processing variables. "You've been staring at those for 3 hours," Sister Carmilla said, her voice muffled by the rebreather. "The Inquisitor has reviewed this data extensively. What makes you think you'll find something he missed?" Different perspective. Batman didn't look up. "Your Inquisition operates on faith and authority. I operate on evidence and deduction. Faith is evidence. The God Emperor guides the righteous. Then why hasn't he guided Cade to the cultists?" Batman met her gaze. The Psyker's eyes, what little he could see behind the rebreather, narrowed dangerously. "Heresy flows easily from your lips, Outlander. Pragmatism. If your methods worked, we wouldn't be having this conversation." Batman returned to the files. "Tell me about Genestealers. Not religious doctrine, practical information, biology, behavior patterns, infiltration methodology." Sister Carmilla was silent for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she approached the table. "Genestealers are tyrannid bioforms, vanguard organisms sent ahead of hive fleets. They infect humans through genetic implantation, creating hybrids. First-generation hybrids are obvious. Multiple arms, alien features. But each subsequent generation appears more human until fourth-generation cultists are virtually indistinguishable from baseline population." "Sleeper agents," Batman muttered. "Multi-generational infiltration. They're not just hiding, they're becoming the population." "Precisely. By the time a cult reveals itself, it's already too entrenched to eliminate without destroying the entire district. Standard protocol is exterminatus." Orbital bombardment until the planet is lifeless. Genocide. Survival. Carmilla's tone hardened. "You don't understand what tyrannids are. They don't conquer. They consume. Every scrap of biomass absorbed, every world stripped to bedrock. Billions die because we showed mercy once and let a Genestealer cult metastasize." Batman absorbed this, filing it under threats that justify extreme measures. He didn't have to like it, but understanding local context was essential. "Show me the missing persons reports, not just Imperial citizens, everyone. Underhive workers, mutants, anyone who disappeared in proximity to confirmed cult activity." The Inquisitor focused on documented citizens, those with Imperial identification. Mistake. Cults recruit from the desperate and forgotten. "Show me the gaps in your data, the people no one bothered to record." Carmilla hesitated, then activated a servo skull. The construct's mechanical eyes glowed as it accessed deeper archives. Data scrolled across a hololithic display. Fragmentary reports from Arbitus Lower District patrols, Enforcer incident logs, even morgue records from charity medici facilities. Batman's eyes tracked patterns invisible to someone looking for faith-based evidence. The missing persons weren't random. They clustered around 3 locations: a desalination plant in the lower industrial sector, a transit hub servicing 11 different manufactorum districts, and a condemned cathedral that had been sealed 40 years ago following structural damage. Here, Batman pointed to the transit hub. 16 disappearances within a 2-kilometer radius. All menial workers, all within the same 3-week period. Your Inquisitor investigated? Arbeits conducted sweeps, found nothing. Because they were looking for obvious hybrids. First and second generation cultists would stay hidden during raids. Batman pulled up architectural schematics, incomplete, corrupted by age and poor maintenance. Transit hubs have maintenance tunnels, waste reclamation systems, spaces between walls where thousands could hide. We purged the tunnels, flamers and frag grenades. Did you check for false walls? Secondary tunnels. Genestealers are bioengineered infiltrators. They'd have excavation capabilities, acid secretions maybe, enhanced strength for digging. Batman traced possible routes through the schematic. If I were establishing a hidden base, I'd create layered defenses. Obvious tunnels as sacrificial decoys. Real nest deeper, accessible only through concealed passages. Carmilla leaned closer, studying his analysis. This is methodical. The Inquisitor relies on psychic divination and faith-based revelation, which works if your targets register in the warp. You said I barely show up psychically. What if Genestealers have similar properties? Muted warp presence, designed by Tyrannid hive mind specifically to avoid Psyker detection? The sister's expression, what Batman could see, shifted from skepticism to consideration. Tyrannids are a shadow in the warp. The hive mind is anathema to chaos. You're suggesting the cult might be psychically camouflaged by their Xenos nature. Exactly. Your Inquisitor's been using the wrong tools for the job. Batman stood. I need to visit the transit hub. Tonight. Before the cult realizes someone's approaching from a different angle. The Inquisitor can find you to this facility. Then get his permission. Tell him I've identified probable nest locations and require field verification. Batman met her gaze. Or we can wait while more people disappear and the cult grows stronger. Your choice. Cade granted permission with conditions. Batman would be accompanied by a full kill team. 8 veteran stormtroopers in carapace armor, Sister Carmilla, and Cade himself. They would conduct the investigation under Batman's guidance, but lethal authority remained with the Inquisitor. The transit hub at night was a circle of hell Dante would have recognized. Thousands of workers shuffled through corroded turnstiles, their faces blank with exhaustion. The air was thick with chemical runoff and human sweat. Lumens flickered, casting shadows that moved wrong. Batman's cowl sensors, limited as they were, painted the environment in thermal and electromagnetic spectra. The hub was a 3-dimensional maze of platforms, cargo lifts, and maintenance corridors. Perfect ambush terrain. 3rd platform, Eastern Quadrant, Batman said quietly, voice carried by the microbead Cade had provided. Thermal anomaly beneath the floor. Too uniform to be random heat bleed. Could be a broken coolant line, Cade countered, but he signaled the kill team to deploy. Stormtroopers moved with professional precision, establishing perimeter and covering sightlines. Batman approached the platform's edge, analyzing structural joins. There, stress fractures in the ferrocrete, covered with industrial sealant. Recent work, but deliberately disguised to look aged. He pressed against the floor, feeling for hollow spaces. Here, void beneath, approximately 3 meters down. "Breaching charges," Cade ordered. "No." Batman held up a hand. "Explosives will alert them and potentially collapse the tunnel. I go down quietly, confirm the nest, then you collapse it with them inside." "Unacceptable. You're an unknown asset, potentially compromised. I'm also the only one trained in stealth infiltration." Batman pulled a rebreather from his utility belt. Precious resources, but necessary. "Give me 10 minutes. If I don't report back, assume I'm dead and proceed with your explosives." Cade studied him, calculation behind augmented eyes. Then, surprising Batman, he nodded. "Sister Carmilla accompanies you. Her psychic senses will detect ambush. 10 minutes, Outlander. Not 1 second more." Batman used a miniature cutting torch, another finite resource, to open a maintenance hatch hidden beneath the sealant. The shaft descended into darkness reeking of organic decay. He dropped silently, cape absorbing the impact, and Carmilla followed with surprising grace for someone in power armor. The tunnel beyond was wrong. Walls showed signs of excavation, not mechanical, but biological, acid scoring and claw marks. The architecture was deliberate but alien, following no human design logic. Chitinous secretions reinforced weak points, biomechanical engineering that made Batman's skin crawl. "I feel them," Carmilla whispered, her force staff glowing brighter. Psychic distortion. Multiple presences but muted, like hearing through water. Batman moved deeper, every sense alert. His cowl's low-light vision revealed chambers branching off the main tunnel, sleeping alcoves filled with makeshift bedding. Empty now, but recently occupied. The cultists were deeper in. Then he heard it. Not voices, chittering. Alien communication overlaid with human whispers. A hybrid language that belonged to neither species fully. Batman held up a fist. "Stop." He peered around a corner into a vast chamber that had been excavated beneath the transit hub's foundations. And there they were. The Genestealer cult. 50, maybe 60 individuals. First-generation hybrids were obvious. Purple-grey skin, additional arms, elongated heads with too many teeth. Second and third generation appeared more human, but moved with unnatural fluidity. And in the center, surrounded by worshipful followers, something massive. A pure, strained Genestealer. 3 meters tall, 4 arms ending in rending claws, eyeless head dominated by a massive jaw. Its carapace was the color of deep ocean chitin, and even from this distance, Batman could see the intelligence behind its alien features. "Throne preserve us," Carmilla breathed. "A patriarch, the cult's progenitor." The creature's head snapped toward their position. Despite being hidden in shadows, despite Batman's stealth training, it had sensed them, not through sight or sound, through something else. Psychic awareness, vibrational detection. The patriarch screeched, and the chamber exploded into motion. "Fall back!" Batman grabbed Carmilla, pulling her into retreat as cultists swarmed the tunnel. His hand found an explosive gel charge, last one, and he slapped it against the tunnel wall before running. The detonation wouldn't kill them, but it would collapse the passage, buying time. They emerged from the maintenance shaft as the tunnel behind them caved in. Cade's stormtroopers immediately opened fire as cultists boiled from other exits Batman hadn't mapped. Lasfire and bolt rounds tore into hybrid flesh, the air filled with alien screams and human curses. "Confirmed nest!" Batman shouted over the chaos. "Primary tunnel collapsed but multiple exits. Patriarch present. You'll need serious firepower." "Bring the flamers forward," Cade commanded. "Purge protocols. Nothing survives." Batman watched the kill team execute its grim work. Flamers turned cultists into screaming torches. Bolters detonated flesh with mass reactive rounds. It was systematic, brutal, and terrifyingly effective. But it was also exactly what Batman had feared. Among the cultists being incinerated were third and fourth generation hybrids, people who looked entirely human. How many were willing participants versus infected victims? How many children had been born into this without choice? The Imperium didn't distinguish. Xenos corruption was a death sentence regardless of culpability. A hybrid burst from cover, rushing Cade with desperation rather than tactics. The Inquisitor drew his power sword in one fluid motion and bisected the cultist mid-stride. No hesitation, no mercy. Batman's fists clenched. He'd found the nest. He'd provided actionable intelligence. But watching the slaughter, justified or not, made him question what he'd become complicit in. "Patriarch's escaping." Sister Carmilla pointed to a collapsed section where rubble was being torn apart from below. The massive Xenos was burrowing out, fleeing with inhuman strength. Cade raised his bolt pistol, but the angle was poor. The creature would reach the Underhive Warren before they could bring heavier weapons to bear. Batman didn't think. Instinct and training overrode calculation. He threw a batarang, explosive model, modified for maximum impact. The blade spun through the air and detonated against the Patriarch's carapace, staggering it. The moment's delay was enough. A stormtrooper's plasma gun discharged, superheated matter engulfing the Xenos. The Patriarch screamed, a sound that resonated on frequencies human ears shouldn't process, and collapsed, chitin blackening and cracking. Silence fell across the transit hub, broken only by the crackle of flames and the moans of the dying. Cade approached Batman, bolt pistol still smoking. "You saved my life. That hybrid would have reached me before I could react. I stopped a threat." Batman's voice was hollow. "That's all. No, you made a choice. You acted to protect humanity against Xenos corruption." Cade holstered his weapon. "Welcome to the 41st Millennium, Bruce Wayne, where moral absolutes die and only survival matters." Batman looked at the burning corpses, human and Xenos both reduced to ash. He'd upheld his code technically. He hadn't killed anyone directly, but he'd enabled this slaughter through his investigation. Was there a difference? "The nest is destroyed," Batman said quietly. "But this was one cell. How many others exist in this hive?" "Unknown. Potentially dozens." Cade gestured to the kill team to secure the area. Which is why I need investigators who think differently than the Inquisition. You found them in hours when I failed for months. At what cost? Cade's expression softened, barely perceptible, but there. The cost of survival in a universe that wants us extinct. You'll learn, Outlander. Everyone does eventually. The only question is whether you break first. Batman walked away from the carnage, Sister Carmilla falling in beside him. The Psyker was silent, but Batman felt her watching him with something that might have been pity. He'd proven his value to the Inquisition. He'd gained access and conditional trust. But he'd also crossed a line he'd sworn never to approach. Not by direct action, but by collaboration with a system built on acceptable atrocities. The transit hub behind them burned, and Batman wondered if his soul was burning with it. Somewhere in the upper spire, in chambers Batman hadn't yet discovered. Inquisitor Cade reviewed footage of the operation and smiled. The Outlander had potential, raw, unrefined, but undeniable. The question was whether he could be shaped into a weapon for the Imperium, or if he would become another problem requiring elimination. Time would reveal all. It always did. 3 weeks. Batman had been in the 41st Millennium for 3 weeks, and he was learning what hell actually looked like. It wasn't fire and brimstone. It was a young mother executed because her son exhibited psychic potential. It was workers sealed alive in a manufactorum section because productivity quotas weren't met. It was an Arbeitsjudge ordering 50 people hanged because one heretic lived among them and confession under torture was considered absolute truth. Batman had witnessed all of this while working as Cade's special consultant. The title meant nothing officially. No rank, no authority, just Cade's personal voucher that kept the bolt pistols from turning his way. But it granted access to investigations, crime scenes, and the inner workings of Imperial justice. Justice. The word tasted like ash in his mouth. He'd solved 4 cases in those 3 weeks. A chaos cult operating from inside a noble household, infiltrated, evidence gathered, entire family tree executed down to infant children. A smuggling ring bringing unauthorized Xenos artifacts into the hive, traced through commercial records, participants flayed alive in public squares. An assassination attempt on a planetary governor, prevented through predictive analysis, would-be assassins and their families thrown into reclamation furnaces. Every success built Cade's trust. Every success added bodies to Batman's conscience. The utility belt was nearly empty now. 2 smoke pellets remained. 1 batarang. The explosive gel was gone. His cape had tears from lasfire near misses. The cowl's systems operated at 60% capacity. Jury-rigged with Imperial components that barely interfaced with his technology. He was running on determination and rapidly depleting hope that he'd find a way home. The current investigation was different, more complex, more dangerous. Cade had received an encrypted message from Inquisitor Lord Garvin Reth of the Ordo Malleus, Daemon Hunters. The message claimed that a demonic incursion was imminent on Hive Volantis, channeled through a chaos cult that had corrupted members of the planetary administration. Reth was en route, but demanded Cade provide preliminary intelligence and contain the threat. Standard Inquisitorial cooperation. Except something in Cade's reaction had triggered Batman's detective instincts. The micro-expression of anger quickly suppressed, the calculated pause before responding, the subtle change in body language from confident to defensive. Inquisitor Cade was hiding something. Batman stood in the archives again, this time accessing files Cade hadn't explicitly authorized. Sister Carmilla was conducting psychic divinations in another wing of the facility. The servo skulls were on patrol rotation, leaving 3-minute gaps in surveillance coverage. He'd memorized the pattern days ago. The data slate in his hands contained Cade's personal correspondence, retrieved through methods he preferred not to examine too closely. Breaking Imperial encryption had taken him 2 weeks of observation, pattern analysis, and exploiting the Imperium's fundamental weakness. They relied more on faith in security than actual security protocols. The messages painted a damning picture. Cade had known about the Chaos Cult for 2 months. He'd deliberately delayed reporting it to higher authorities. Why? Because the cult leader was Magister Volus Dren, the Hive's master of the Administratum, the bureaucrat who controlled all Imperial records, tithes, and resource allocation for Hive Volantis. Dren was corrupt, skimming resources and falsifying production reports, standard corruption for the Imperium. But he'd also been blackmailing Cade, threatening to reveal that the Inquisitor had used forbidden Xenos technology during a previous investigation, a crime punishable by execution even for an Inquisitor. Cade's dilemma was elegant in its brutality: report the Chaos Cult and face exposure of his own heresy, or eliminate the cult quietly and maintain his secret. He'd chosen the latter, conducting a shadow investigation without official channels. Then Inquisitor Lord Reth had received intelligence from his own sources, possibly a rival to Dren within the Administratum. And now Cade was trapped. If Reth discovered Cade's delay, it would raise questions. If the cult's corruption spread while Cade stalled, he'd be blamed for negligence. Batman closed the data slate as footsteps approached. Sister Carmilla entered the archives, her force staff dim but her posture alert. "The Inquisitor requests your presence in the Strategium," she said. "Inquisitor Lord Reth has arrived ahead of schedule." "Understood." Batman followed her through corridors lined with prayer-carved walls and purity seals. His mind raced through implications and calculations. The Strategium was a reinforced chamber, dominated by a hololithic display showing Hive Volantis in 3-dimensional detail. Cade stood beside the display, his power armor polished to parade standard, compensating through appearance for the stress Batman could read in his jaw tension and eye movements. Beside him stood Inquisitor Lord Gavin Reth. Where Cade was aristocratic and calculated, Reth was a walking cathedral of militant faith. Terminator armor, massive, ancient power armor that made Cade look like a child by comparison, covered in purity seals, litanies, and kill markings. His face was scarred beyond humanity, augmented with targeting implants and a vox grill that made his voice sound like grinding stone. A Nemesis Force sword hung at his hip, a weapon designed specifically to kill demons. His retinue included 3 Grey Knights. Space Marines in silver armor, radiating psychic power that made Batman's teeth ache. This was the Imperium's apex predator. "Inquisitor Cade," Reth's voice boomed. "Explain why preliminary containment has not been established around Magister Dren's administrative complex." "My lord," Cade's voice was steady, controlled. "I've been gathering intelligence to ensure complete eradication. Chaos cults have contingencies. Strike too early, and cells escape to corrupt elsewhere." "Intelligence gathering." Reth's tone dripped contempt. "You've had 2 weeks since my initial communication. The longer we wait, the stronger the cult becomes. Emperor's blood, Cade. This is basic Malleus protocol." "With respect, Lord Reth, I've been conducting operations with limited resources. Hive Volantis lacks dedicated Ordo Malleus assets, which is why I'm here." Reth turned to Batman, and those augmented eyes fixed on him with mechanical precision. "And this is your pet anomaly? The dimensional refugee?" "Bruce Wayne," Cade said carefully. "He's proven invaluable in recent investigations. Unconventional methodology that produces results." "Xenos infiltration technique?" Reth stepped closer to Batman, towering over him by nearly a meter in that massive armor. "Or worse, warp-spawned corruption masquerading as utility." Batman met his gaze without flinching. "Human investigator from a parallel Earth. Inquisitor Cade has my genetic analysis and psychic profiles confirming baseline humanity." "Baseline humanity can be corrupted." Reth gestured to one of the Grey Knights. "Brother Captain Aldrich, conduct a psychic interrogation. If this creature shows any taint, execute it immediately." The Grey Knight stepped forward, his psychic presence washing over Batman like freezing water. Batman forced himself to remain still as the Space Marine's consciousness pressed against his mind, a sensation like being dissected by thought itself. "Peculiar," Brother Captain Aldrich said, his voice unexpectedly refined. "His soul is muted, psychically present but operating on different resonance frequencies. I detect no chaos corruption, no demonic taint, no Xenos influence. Whatever he is, he's clean." "Interesting." Reth studied Batman with renewed focus. "An asset that barely registers in the warp, potentially useful against cultists who've learned to shield themselves from psychic detection." He turned back to Cade. "Very well. Your pet may assist, but I'm assuming operational command. Magister Dren's complex will be assaulted at dawn. Kill teams are being deployed. Dren and his entire staff will be interrogated and executed." Batman saw Cade's expression freeze, just for a microsecond. The Inquisitor had been planning something more subtle, probably hoping to eliminate Dren quietly and destroy the evidence of his own compromise. Reth's direct assault removed that option. "My lord," Cade said, "shouldn't we conduct reconnaissance first? Verify the cult's extent and leadership structure? We know the leadership, Dren. We know the location, the administrative complex. We know the threat level. Demonic corruption potentially days from full manifestation." Reth's tone sharpened. "Unless you're suggesting we delay further. Perhaps you have information suggesting this situation isn't as urgent as my intelligence indicates." The trap was elegant. If Cade argued for delay, he'd raise suspicion. If he complied, his secret would likely emerge during interrogations of Dren's staff. Someone would mention Dren's blackmail material, and Cade's use of forbidden Xenos technology would be exposed. Batman saw the calculation flash across Cade's face. The Inquisitor was considering his options: full confession and hope for clemency, allow the assault, and pray Dren's blackmail files were destroyed in fighting, or something more desperate. "No delay needed, my lord," Cade said quietly. "I'll deploy my kill teams in support of your assault." "Acceptable." Reth gestured to the hololithic display. "Brother Captain Aldrich will lead the primary breach. Your forces will secure secondary exits. The anomaly," he pointed to Batman, "will accompany my command squad. His psychic silence may help us avoid cultist detection during approach." "My lord," Batman said carefully, "I should mention that I lack military training in your tactical doctrines. I may be more effective in reconnaissance capacity. You'll follow orders, or I'll have Brother Captain Aldrich remove your head." Reth's augmented eyes glowed brighter. "In the Ordo Malleus, hesitation breeds corruption. Obedience is purity. Understood?" Batman nodded, filing away everything about Reth's personality. Absolutist, aggressive, convinced of his righteousness. Dangerous, but also predictable within that framework. The briefing continued for another hour. Assault vectors, kill zone designations, purge protocols. Batman memorized it all while simultaneously calculating his actual objective. Find Dren's blackmail files before Reth's forces did, determine if Cade's compromise represented genuine threat or mere imperial hypocrisy, and somehow navigate this nightmare without more innocent blood on his conscience. Because one thing was clear from the assault plan: everyone in that administrative complex was condemned. Not just Dren and confirmed cultists, everyone. Secretaries, janitors, servitors, anyone who might have been exposed to corruption, guilty or innocent, they would all burn. Dawn came with the color of old blood across Hive Volantis's polluted sky. Batman stood in the staging area wearing requisitioned flak armor over his damaged suit, the closest thing to camouflage the Imperium had provided. His utility belt was hidden beneath the armor, final resources ready for deployment. Reth's command squad consisted of the Inquisitor Lord, Brother Captain Aldrich, 2 Grey Knight Terminators, and a Sister of Battle named Palatine Jasira, a warrior nun whose armor was decorated with flaming hearts and scripture. They radiated absolute confidence and zealous purpose. Batman felt like an infiltrator among fanatics, which functionally he was. The administrative complex was a fortress masquerading as bureaucracy. Reinforced ferrocrete walls, authorized security checkpoints, surveillance systems that covered every approach. Under normal circumstances, it would take hours to breach properly. Reth simply ordered the Grey Knights to teleport them in. Reality broke. Batman felt his consciousness fragmenting as the warp-based teleportation engaged, a sensation like being turned inside out while falling through infinite distance that lasted both eternally and instantaneously. They materialized in a corridor filled with screaming alarms and panicked administrators. The Grey Knights opened fire immediately. Bolt rounds tore through unarmed civilians. Stormbolters, weapons designed to kill demons, reduced humans to red mist. "Secure the perimeter," Reth commanded. "Wayne, with me. Dren's office is 3 levels up." Batman forced himself to move, stepping over corpses and body parts. His hands trembled, not fear, but rage barely contained. These people had been executed without trial, without verification of corruption, without mercy. "Eyes forward, anomaly," Reth growled. "Show weakness here, and I'll assume you're compromised." They ascended through the complex methodically. Every room they entered became a slaughterhouse. The Grey Knights were efficient killers, enhanced by genetic modification and psychic power. Resistance was futile. Security forces with laser guns might as well have been attacking with harsh language. Batman's detective mind catalogued everything: architectural layout, security protocols, data vault locations. Dren's office was ahead, but the blackmail files wouldn't be there. Too obvious. Corrupt bureaucrats always maintained hidden caches. Then he felt it, a wrongness in the air, like reality itself developing a fever. The temperature dropped, the lumens flickered, and from deeper in the complex, something laughed with a voice that belonged to no human throat. "Demonic presence confirmed," Brother Captain Aldrich said, his force sword igniting with silver flame. "The cult has begun the summoning." "Faster," Reth commanded. "If the demon manifests fully, this entire district becomes expendable." They breached Dren's office, a lavish chamber filled with stolen wealth and contraband luxuries. The Magister himself stood behind his desk, a rotund man whose eyes had changed color to a sickly pink. Around him, 12 cultists chanted in a language that hurt to hear, syllables that made Batman's vision blur and his teeth ache. In the center of the room, a portal was opening. Not metaphorically, literally. Reality was tearing like tissue paper, and through the gap, something looked at them with attention that felt like being skinned alive. Zentian corruption, Reth identified. The changer of ways. "Kill the cultists! Collapse the portal!" The Grey Knights charged. Bolt rounds and psychic fire met cultist sorcery. The air filled with impossible colors and the stench of burning reality. Batman moved differently, not toward the combat, but toward a side chamber he'd identified during approach. While gods and monsters clashed, the detective went hunting for evidence. The vault was hidden behind a false wall, secured with a combination lock. Batman's lockpicks, salvaged from his utility belt and modified with Imperial tools, made quick work of it. Inside, data slates containing years of blackmail material, corrupt dealings, and leverage against dozens of Imperial officials, including Inquisitor Cade. Batman grabbed the relevant data slates, destroying the backups with a careful application of his last smoke pellet's corrosive chemicals. If these files disappeared, Cade's secret remained hidden. If they survived, another Inquisitor would eventually discover them. His choice, his responsibility. Behind him, the battle reached its crescendo. A demon's shriek, genuine, ear-splitting, reality-warping terror filled the complex. Then silence, broken only by flames and the psychic residue of banishment. Batman emerged from the vault as Reth executed the last cultist with his nemesis force sword. Dren was dead, his body twisted by failed transformation. The portal was collapsing, demon banished before full manifestation. Complete purge protocols, Reth commanded. Incinerate everything. This complex is condemned. Batman looked at the stolen data slates in his hand, hidden beneath his flak armor. Cade's corruption. Dren's blackmail empire. Evidence of imperial rot that stretched far beyond this single cult. He could reveal it. Expose Cade and every corrupt official in those files. Bring some measure of accountability to this nightmare system. Or he could destroy it. Protect Cade, who despite his flaws had shown him clemency and might be Batman's only ally in this universe. The choice crystallized in his mind. Integrity versus survival. His code versus pragmatism. Batman made his decision. He approached Reth, holding out a single data slate. Not Cade's, but one of Dren's more minor corruption files. Found this in a vault. Appears to be standard bureaucratic theft. Nothing relating to the cult. Reth took it, scanned the contents, and tossed it into the flames consuming the office. Irrelevant. Dren is dead. Cult eliminated. Demon banished. The God Emperor protects. He turned to Batman, and those augmented eyes studied him with unsettling intensity. You performed adequately, anomaly. Perhaps there's use for you in the Ordo Malleus. I work with Inquisitor Cade. For now. Reth walked away, grey knights falling in formation. But remember, Outlander, in the Imperium, loyalty is measured by action, not words. Prove yourself useful and you'll find protection. Fail, and you'll find only the Emperor's judgment. Batman watched them leave, the data slates burning a hole in his armor. He'd lied to an Inquisitor. He'd concealed evidence. He'd chosen to protect a compromised official over exposing corruption. In Gotham, this would have been unthinkable. In the 41st Millennium, it was Tuesday. Sister Carmilla appeared beside him, her force staff dim. You destroyed files in that vault. I felt the psychic disturbance. Dren's personal blackmail material. Nothing relevant to the cult. Truth. The Psyker's voice was neutral, or partial truth. I cannot read you clearly enough to determine which. Does it matter? To the Inquisitor? Perhaps. To me? She paused. I've served Cade for 12 years. He's ruthless, pragmatic, occasionally cruel. But he's also saved millions through his investigations. In the Imperium, we measure worth by results, not purity. No one is pure, not even the God Emperor himself, buried in his throne of suffering. Batman looked at her. You're saying the ends justify the means. I'm saying the means are irrelevant when the alternative is extinction. Carmilla turned away. Come. The Inquisitor will want to debrief you. They walked through the burning complex, past corpses and chaos corruption being consumed by cleansing flames. Batman's hands, hidden inside gauntlets, clenched around the stolen data slates. He'd crossed another line. Not just witnessing atrocity, but actively participating in cover-up. Protecting corruption because the alternative was worse. Was he adapting to survive? Or was he becoming complicit in the very system he should oppose? The answer terrified him more than any demon or Xenos threat. He didn't know anymore. And in the 41st Millennium, uncertainty was the first step toward damnation. Cade knew. Batman could see it in the way the Inquisitor had looked at him during the debriefing, not with gratitude, but with calculation. The question wasn't whether Batman had destroyed the blackmail files. The question was why. 5 days had passed since the administrative complex purge. Inquisitor Lord Reth had departed for another war zone, satisfied that the demonic threat was contained. The Imperium had declared the incident resolved, executed the compromised district's leadership, and promoted new administrators who would undoubtedly become just as corrupt within a decade. Standard Imperial procedure. Entropy with bolt pistols. A chime announced a visitor. Batman pulled on his cowl and opened the door. Sister Carmilla stood in the corridor with 2 members of Cade's inner retinue. Batman hadn't interacted with directly. Interrogator Silas Vaughn, a cybernetically enhanced investigator whose left hemisphere was replaced with cogitator implants, and acolyte Mira Kellen, a former Arbeitsjudge whose augmented eyes could supposedly detect lies through micro-expression analysis. "The Inquisitor requests your presence," Carmilla said formally. Too formally. Immediately. This wasn't a request. It was an arrest without calling it one. They escorted him to sub-levels Batman had never been authorized to access. The air grew colder. The prayers carved into walls gave way to bare metal inscribed with wards and seals. This was the facility's black site, the place where enemies of the Inquisition came to confess or die. The Interrogation Chamber had restraint chairs with neural jackports. Torture implements blessed by the ecclesiarchy, a psychic amplifier that could literally flay the mind. And standing beside the restraint chair, Inquisitor Cade in full power armor, his face carved from ice. "Sit," Cade commanded. Batman sat. The restraints didn't engage, yet. Cade was making a point. "I could restrain you, but I'm offering the illusion of choice. After the Dren incident, I conducted a thorough audit of the Magister's personal files," Cade said. "Imagine my surprise when I discovered that Dren's primary blackmail vault had been completely destroyed. Deliberate corrosion using sophisticated compounds." He paused. "You destroyed evidence during an inquisitorial investigation. That's heresy, punishable by execution." Batman met his gaze. Dren's blackmail empire implicated dozens of Imperial officials. Exposing it all would have destabilized the Hive's administration during a crisis. I made a judgment call. How pragmatic. How imperial of you. Cade's voice dripped sarcasm. "Except I don't believe that's the whole truth. Sister Carmilla, psychic assessment." The Psyker stepped forward, her consciousness pressing against Batman's mind. "Partial truth," Carmilla reported. "He destroyed files to protect stability. But there's more. Specific files, specific protection. The details are obscured." Cade circled the chair. "Interrogator Vaughn, analysis. The cybernetic investigator's cogitator implants word. Subject's behavior pattern shows signs of concealment anxiety. Decreased sleep efficiency. Increased vigilance regarding personal quarters. Probability of possessing hidden materials, 87%. Acolyte Kellen." The former judge's augmented eyes scanned Batman's face. Micro-expressions indicate protective motivation. Subject believes he acted righteously, but fears consequences. He's hiding something he considers more important than his own survival. Cade stopped pacing. You protected me. You found files proving I used Xenos technology during a previous investigation. Dren's leverage over me. You destroyed them, knowing that if Reth discovered my compromise, I'd face execution. His voice hardened. Now explain why. Batman calculated his response. Because you gave me a chance when you could have executed me as a warp anomaly. Because despite your methods, you've been honest about this universe's brutality. Because in the 41st millennium, everyone is compromised. The only question is whether you're corrupt for personal gain or pragmatic necessity. And you judged me to be the latter. Yes. Cade laughed, harsh and bitter. Emperor's blood, you really are from a different universe. Only someone not raised in the Imperium would consider that reasonable justification. He turned to his retinue. Leave us. All of you. The retinue departed, and Batman was alone with an Inquisitor who could kill him without consequence. Cade deactivated his power armor's external speakers, switching to quieter modulation. You want to know what Xenos technology I used? Eldar soulstones, crystallized psychic matrices that capture dying Elder consciousness. I used them to interrogate Xenos prisoners, without risking demonic corruption through warp exposure. That doesn't sound like heresy. Sounds like effective intelligence gathering. It is heresy. Using Xenos artifacts, even for Imperial benefit, violates Ordo Xenos strictures. I should have destroyed the soulstones and conducted conventional interrogation, even if it risked Psyker possession. Cade sat across from Batman, suddenly looking exhausted. But conventional methods would have gotten 12 of my acolytes killed. The soulstones saved them, so I broke the rules, got intelligence that saved a subsector from Dark Elder raids, and created leverage Dren exploited for 3 years. Why are you telling me this? Because you trusted me enough to commit heresy on my behalf. And because I need to know if you're an ally I can trust, or a liability I need to eliminate. Batman leaned forward. What do you want from me? The truth, all of it. This was the moment. Batman could maintain partial cover or risk complete transparency. My world had crime, but no aliens. Evil, but no demons. I became a vigilante because I watched my parents murdered when I was 8. I swore to prevent others from experiencing that trauma. I trained for years, built resources, created a symbol to inspire fear in criminals and hope in victims. Batman's voice was controlled. In my world, I was called Batman. I operated outside the law because the law was too slow or too corrupt, but I had rules. No guns, no killing, ever. Cade listened without interruption. Then I fell into your universe, into the 41st millennium, where my rules are not just impractical, but potentially suicidal, where mercy breeds catastrophe, where the system I'd fight is the only thing preventing humanity's extinction. Batman met Cade's gaze. I destroyed your blackmail files because you're one of the few people here who understands that pragmatism and principle can coexist. You're corrupt by your own laws, but you use that corruption to save lives. That's something I can work with. Can you? Or are you compromising piece by piece until nothing's left but rationalization? The question struck deep, because Batman had asked himself the same thing every night. "I don't know," Batman admitted, "but standing by while innocents suffer because I refuse to work within a flawed system is its own form of evil. So I make the choice to act, even if it damns me." Cade stood, activating a hololithic display showing a star chart. 3 days ago, I received intelligence. Inquisitor Lord Reth is investigating me. Not the Dren blackmail. He doesn't know about that yet. But my operational methods, my independent investigations that bypass official channels. He thinks you're compromised. He thinks I'm a threat to his authority. Reth is old-school Ordo Malleus. Absolute faith, absolute obedience, zero tolerance for deviation. Cade highlighted a specific system. In 2 weeks, Reth arrives with full authority to conduct formal inquiry. If he finds evidence of my Xenos technology use, I'll be declared excommunicate traitoris and executed. Batman studied the display. You need an exit strategy. I need a victory. Something so significant that Reth's inquiry becomes politically untenable. Cade highlighted a different system. The Quadrillion Expanse. 3 systems, resource-rich, strategically valuable. Currently under Xenos occupation, Tau Empire expansion. The Imperium wants those systems back, but conventional assault would cost millions of lives. If I could provide intelligence enabling decisive strike, surgical removal of Tau command, minimal casualties, I'd be too valuable to execute. You want me to spy on the Tau? Your psychic invisibility makes you ideal for infiltration. The Tau use artificial intelligence and sensor networks, not psychic detection. You could gather intelligence no Imperial agent could acquire. Cade's voice softened slightly. Help me succeed, and I'll dedicate resources to finding a way to send you home. The Imperium has tech priests who study dimensional phenomena, radical inquisitors who've explored warp rifts, even captured Xenos devices. I can't guarantee success, but I guarantee I'll try. His voice hardened. Or refuse, and I'll have you executed as a security risk. Your choice. Batman had been in impossible situations before, but those had been his universe, his rules. Here, he had nothing except his skills and the provisional trust of a compromised Inquisitor offering a deal with the devil. If I do this, infiltrate Tau territory, gather your intelligence, you dedicate every resource to getting me home. You have my word, such as its worth in this universe. Batman stood. And if Reth comes for you before I return, then you're on your own in a universe that considers you an anomaly requiring elimination. Cade extended his hand. Do we have an accord? Batman looked at the offered hand. Every instinct screamed this was another compromise, another step into darkness. But Cade was offering actual hope of escape. The Batman of Gotham would have refused on principle. The Batman of the 41st Millennium understood that principles without pragmatism were elaborate suicide. He shook Cade's hand. Accord. 3 weeks of warp travel. Time moved differently in the Imperium. Their subjective 3 weeks might translate to anywhere from days to months in real space. The uncertainty was maddening for someone who built strategies on precise timing. Batman used the time studying the Tau Empire through Sister Carmilla's briefings. A young Xenos civilization built on collective good, technological innovation, and expansionist diplomacy backed by overwhelming firepower. The Imperium's ideological opposite, meritocratic rather than hereditary, rational rather than faith-based, willing to incorporate species through persuasion rather than just conquest. Different packaging, same authoritarian core. His mission was straightforward. Infiltrate Tau-controlled Quadrillion Prime, locate their command structure, identify strategic vulnerabilities, extract intelligence enabling Imperial strikes. Simple objectives wrapped in impossibly complex execution. The transport dropped out of warp at the Quadrillion Expanse's edge. Unlike Imperial systems, choked with debris and defensive installations. The Tau presence was clean, organized, efficient. Orbital platforms gleamed in perfect geometric formations. Ships moved with coordinated precision. Batman disembarked during cargo transfer at Orbital Station Kitara, presenting forged credentials as a mercenary scout. Tau security scanned his biometrics, found no criminal flags, and cleared him without incident. Too easy. Either Tau security was overconfident, or they flagged him for surveillance. Assume the latter. Quadrillion Prime's surface showed the transformation 8 years of Tau occupation had wrought. Where Imperial governance left industrial cancers, Tau administration created planned developments with green space, efficient transit, breathable air. But beneath the facade, Batman saw the cost. Workers moving with robotic efficiency, children educated in facilities emphasizing collective benefit over individual achievement, dissenters quietly escorted for voluntary re-education. Tyranny with a smile. 27 days of infiltration preparation. Batman moved through the underworld, gathering information through observation and careful questioning. He learned guard rotations, surveillance patterns, security protocols. The Tau were methodical, predictable within their efficiency. Exactly the kind of overconfidence Batman exploited. The breakthrough came when he identified Harkin, a former Imperial Guard sergeant turned human auxiliary, suffering moral crisis over his collaboration. Batman didn't recruit through intimidation or bribery. He simply listened without judgment. "They're not evil," Harkin said one night, drunk in a collaborator bar. The Ethereals genuinely believe the greater good is humanity's salvation. But belief doesn't excuse the re-education camps, genetic modification of dissidents, slow erasure of human culture. He looked at Batman with haunted eyes. "I thought I was choosing a better future. Now I'm just another enforcer wearing different colors." "Can you help me stop it?" Batman asked. Harkin was silent. Then, "What do you need?" The infiltration happened during a plasma storm, predictable weather interference that provided cover. Harkin provided access codes to the command facility's auxiliary entrance, bypassing primary security. Batman moved through corridors designed for Xenos proportions, his compact size advantageous. He'd studied Tau psychology. They valued honor, efficiency, collective benefit. They also had blind spots. arrogance about technological superiority, underestimation of individual human capability, complete lack of experience with someone like Batman. He reached a data terminal in an auxiliary monitoring station and deployed Cade's data siphon device. 4 minutes before detection. 3 minutes to download tactical data, troop deployments, supply logistics, command hierarchy, strategic planning. 1 minute to extract. 2 minutes elapsed. 60% complete. Then alarms shrieked. External threat detection. Hololithic displays showed space combat in high orbit. Imperial Navy vessels emerging from warp space. Lance batteries firing. Tau defensive platforms responding. Cade had launched the assault early, striking while opportunity existed, regardless of Batman's survival. Batman grabbed the data siphon, 75% downloaded, and ran. Firecast warriors mobilized, responding to both orbital assault and internal breach. He used his last explosive gel to seal corridors, the batarang to disable a drone, the smoke pellet to cover escape from a patrol. Every resource expended. Pure improvisation and desperation. Harkin waited at the auxiliary entrance with a transport. "Get in! They'll lock down the district in minutes." Batman didn't argue. Behind them, fire warriors emerged, pulse rifles tracking. Energy blasts scorched armor as Harkin drove with combat-trained skill. "Spaceport!" Harkin shouted. "Civilian transports evacuating to avoid collateral damage." "We blend in. Get off-world before lockdown." The spaceport was chaos. Thousands flooding transport vessels. Batman and Harkin joined the masses, 2 more refugees among multitudes. The transport lifted off as Tau interceptors arrived, pulse weapons tearing into civilian vessels. 3 ships exploded, thousands dying because they'd been too slow. Speed was survival. Mercy got you killed. They docked with Imperial Navy cruiser Righteous Fury, where armored ratings detained every refugee for interrogation. Batman was eventually brought to a command deck where Inquisitor Cade waited. "You succeeded," Cade said, gesturing to the data siphon. "Intelligence complete? 75%. Enough to cripple Tau operations." Batman held the device. "You launched early." Opportunity presented itself. Striking immediately maximized success probability. Cade's expression didn't change. "Your survival was preferable but not essential." "Honest." Batman extended the data siphon. "Our agreement stands?" Cade took the device, verifying contents. "Agreement stands. Though Reth's investigation has accelerated, he arrives at Volantis within the week. And I'm relocating to a black site in the Ghoul Stars where radical Inquisitors research dimensional phenomena and Xenos technology. You're coming with me. Your psychic invisibility fascinates our tech priests, and keeping you from Reth's scrutiny serves both our interests." Batman processed this. Cade was essentially going rogue, fleeing authority while maintaining classified operations pretense. "What about Harkin, the collaborator who helped me?" "Standard processing, interrogation, probable execution as traitor. He saved my life. He's the reason I escaped with the intelligence. He's also a traitor who collaborated with Xenos and only betrayed them when survival demanded it. His utility doesn't override his crimes." Batman had prepared for this moment through weeks of compromise and rationalization. No, Excuse me? You don't execute Harkin. He's under my protection. Cade's eyes glowed brighter. You don't have authority to protect anyone. You're an anomaly operating under my sufferance. Then I'm exercising the only power I have. You want me cooperative for dimensional research? You want my skills for future operations? Then Harkin lives, imprisoned if necessary, but alive. This is the line you choose? After everything you've witnessed, enabled, you draw the line at saving one traitor? Yes. Because if I can't save one person, one man who chose right even when it damned him, then I've become exactly what this universe wants. Another monster justifying atrocity through necessity. Batman's voice was ice. I've compromised enough. This is non-negotiable. Silence stretched. Naval officers watched with tension, hands drifting toward weapons. This was mutiny, a civilian refusing inquisitorial orders. Cade could have him executed. Instead, Cade laughed. You magnificent, stubborn fool. You think one life matters in a galaxy where billions die daily? One life always matters. That's the difference between survival and existence worth surviving for. Cade studied him. Then, fine. Harkin lives. Indentured service under my authority, ongoing surveillance. One betrayal and he's executed immediately. His voice hardened. But understand, you just spent significant capital on sentiment. Next time I need something, this debt is called. Understood. Hours later, Sister Carmilla visited. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've witnessed in 12 years. Probably both. Batman looked at her. Will Cade honor finding a way home? He honors his words when expedient. Your value currently outweighs inconvenience. She paused. But dimensional research is dangerous. Most subjects don't survive. The tech priests are brilliant, but completely detached from ethical constraints. Trading one nightmare for another. Welcome to the 41st Millennium. At least this nightmare might send you home. Carmilla moved toward the exit. For what it's worth, saving Harkin was admirable. Pointless in the grand scheme, but admirable. Hold on to that principle. This universe devours such things. Outside the viewport, Cadrillan Prime burned under Imperial bombardment. Tau were driven back. Collaborators would be executed. Resistors would be liberated back into Imperial service. Different oppression. Same suffering. Batman closed his eyes, feeling the weight of every choice, every compromise, every step into darkness. But he hadn't broken. Not yet. And as long as that remained true, there was hope. Fragile, desperate, probably doomed, but still hope. 6 months in the 41st Millennium had taught Bruce Wayne what Gotham never could. That some darkness was too vast for one person to illuminate, and some compromises carved scars deeper than any physical wound. The Ghoul Stars research facility was a nightmare of forbidden science. Tech priests conducting experiments that blurred the line between genius and heresy, probing dimensional rifts that leaked warp energy and madness in equal measure. Batman endured their tests, allowing them to study his psychic invisibility while he studied them, learning everything about dimensional mechanics, warp travel theory, and the thin places where realities touched. Cade kept his word, directing resources toward finding Batman a way home. But the Inquisitor was also keeping him close, using Batman's skills for investigations that grew increasingly complex and morally ambiguous. Every case solved built Cade's reputation and bought time against Reth's pursuit. Every success made Batman more complicit in a system he should have opposed. Harkins served alongside them, indentured but alive, grateful for salvation and terrified of its cost. He'd become Batman's reminder that even in hell, individual choices mattered. Sister Carmilla watched it all with knowing eyes, her psychic senses detecting something Batman tried to hide. He was adapting, not breaking, but changing, becoming something neither fully the Dark Knight of Gotham nor entirely a creature of the 41st millennium. Something new, something necessary. The dimensional research progressed, slowly, dangerously, but it progressed. And on nights when Batman stood at viewports watching stars that weren't his stars, he wondered, if he found a way home, could he return to who he'd been? Or had the 41st millennium already claimed him in ways more profound than any physical imprisonment? The answer terrified him more than any demon or Xenos threat. He didn't know if he wanted to go back to a world where such moral simplicity was possible. Because the Batman who'd fallen through that rift had believed justice could exist without compromise. The Batman who survived the 41st millennium knew that survival itself was the only justice possible when the alternative was extinction. And somewhere between those truths, Bruce Wayne was being forged into something the multiverse had never seen. A detective who understood that hope without pragmatism was fantasy. But pragmatism without hope was damnation. The Emperor protects, they said. But Batman had learned that sometimes you protect yourself. The Emperor protects. More stories await.